So, hi everyone. This is Ashish Gupta. I'm the founder and CEO for Benori Knowledge.
KPO or knowledge process outsourcing is a fast growing industry that has been a major contributor to India's services exports revenue. It offers India a sustainable way to generate employment and grow the GDP. In this episode, your host Akshay Dutt is talking with Ashish Gupta, the founder of Benori Knowledge and a pioneer in the KPO space, having been in the founding team of India's very first large KPO, Evalueserve. Ashish has had an amazing journey of building not just startups but also two of India's most respected private universities, Ashoka University and Plaksha University. In this conversation, he goes through his journey and shares lessons for founders and startup builders. Listen on, and if you like such insightful conversations with disruptive startup founders, then do subscribe to the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app.
I think even in the younger days when I was growing up, there was a lot of discussion in the house about our country, our great country, and that's why there was always this passion to do something significant in terms of making sure that India develops and then all of us give our own little contribution towards that. So actually in those days, you would either go and join Delhi University or you would prepare for IIT or get into medical. I was most excited about was becoming an engineer. So that's when I also joined the rat race. The IIT JEE exam fortunately got through and ended up in IIT.
Okay. And from campus, where did you get placed through campus?
It's probably become better now, but in those days, actually, a lot of us IITians never ended up becoming or playing of engineering. I mean, a lot of us went to the US, went into engineering. I actually did the mix of the two. Although I had got through IIM Ahmedabad, I still decided to go to Carnegie Mellon for my MBA. There also, it was a difficult decision, but talking to a lot of people, and they said, look, go out and explore the world and get a global exposure, build a global network. And then since I was so passionately Indian and basically, my mindset, I said, okay, fine, let's go there for a couple of years, but then anyways, I'll come back.
Like from CMU, then did you work in the US or did you come back immediately?
Yeah, I had worked for a year there, but I did not really want to fall into the green card. A lot of people get stuck there because they are waiting for the card, and then it gets converted into what is called the X+1 syndrome. A lot of people keep on saying, we'll go back to India next year. And then next year comes. I just left everything, came back to India without a job, actually. In those days, that was probably the only way of doing it. I had come back at a time when companies had basically hired already for the next incoming class. So there were very few opportunities, but I got lucky again. So I've been very lucky in life. I've been blessed on various dimensions. So I came back and then I joined McKinsey.
Okay, which was a pretty coveted career path to follow.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you joined as a consultant, like you were solving problems for clients around optimization of business models or go-to-market or cost-cutting, stuff like that.
Yeah, classical management consulting. The interesting part was that even McKinsey was young in India at that time. So there were a lot of different experiences in terms of helping out with various aspects of a business. So it was almost like working in a startup.
Yes. How did the move to Evalueserve happen?
Before I joined Evalueserve, I created a .com. At that point in time, model which we had started with was similar to Facebook. But there were, I think, two issues. One was that I actually did not know how to execute. So it's
like how to write code.
No. We obviously hired people to build the product or build the website and everything. But how to execute in a startup environment, right? It's one thing to be in a very large consulting firm where it's a very structured environment. And it's a very different thing when everything comes to you, every decision you have to make, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, and so on. And so the real issue was that it was very difficult to really figure out a product market fit or really and execute well. But at the same time, great humbling experience because failure teaches you a lot. So from this bit of a swagger that one would have, IIT, Carnegie Mellon, McKinsey, you come down to Mother Earth and realize that, okay, you are just also another individual and no big deal. And then you learn from your failures a lot.
So this was like a bootstrapped endeavor, like you put in your own money in building the product?
A little bit of my own money. Actually, I've been all my savings into that. So by the time I wrapped up that .com, I was down to 3,000 rupees in my bank. But we did raise some money from some angels at that point in time.
Okay. And so you were trying to do like a social platform, like where people share.
You could chat with each other. You could exchange photographs. There was a gifting facility. You could send flowers and cakes. And a very interesting concept called Family Tree. So the company was called, it was around a social networking website. But for your family, you could also develop a family tree, which that you might find some long lost cousins or cousin's cousin.
Okay. And why did you choose Evalueserve then once you decided to wind up?
No, so I had some choices at that point in time. And of course, when you are a failed founder, then there are many more people who get interested in hiring you because that experience is very rich and very enlightening. But at that point in time, I got very excited about this whole startup environment and so on. A very senior partner at McKinsey sort of called me one day and said that he was thinking of starting a company like Evalueserve, and he said, would you like to come and join? So I also knew him, and then I anyway wanted to work in the startup environment. So that's why I decided to go.
So you were like part of the founding team.
Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me about the journey of how Evalueserve scaled up. How did they discover product market fit? What were their growth levers? You've seen that journey intimately, probably from the first 10 employees to, I don't know, it must be thousands of employees now.
Forever, I was called the employee number -1 because I joined before there was anything, right? What had happened is in 1999, McKinsey had come out with a report for NASSCOM, the first report. And in that, along with all the other IT services and BPM services, in that report, there was also a lot of mention for higher value-added services in India. That in the area of data analytics or R&D or things like this. Given the background that we had, we always felt that India is, as a country and the talent pool that we have here is very capable of delivering on very high-end services from here. So the focus from the very beginning was on what is now called KPO, Knowledge Process Outsourcing. That is actually a segment or an industry that I had in some sense coined, for which Prime Minister Manmohan Singh also gave me an award for that. So it was, as typically would happen in any new company, you start out, you start selling, you start making mistakes, you have process evolution in your quality process. But some of the things that I realized in that journey was, one, of course, we as a country are capable of doing a lot of very interesting work, very high and cutting edge. Yeah. Second, quality is very important. So one has to focus on quality right from the very beginning. And third, at the end of the day, it all comes down to people, the kind of people that you have in your organization, the kind of roles you put them in. So a lot of times companies, especially startups, make this mistake of putting a wrong person in a very difficult role, or there being a organizational structurally speaking, there being a lot of noise. And this is something I later on learned at Harvard when I had gone there for an executive course. Ultimately, it comes down to excellence. So a lot of companies, and especially startup companies and who get very well funded, they somehow believe that if they expand quickly, then that is what is going to lead to value creation. So you should never expand at the cost of excellence and quality. Excellence is actually scale, and scale is not scale.
That's fascinating. How do you embed excellence into an organizational DNA? Does it come from the founders that they are obsessive about excellence and therefore it becomes part of the culture? Or can it be introduced through processes? And what's the way to build excellence as part of your DNA?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. This is a very broad topic and a long conversation can be had just on this one. But I think Peter Drucker, once said, that culture has a strategy for breakfast. Okay, which means that you can define whatever strategy you want. You can define whatever processes you want. You can have whatever technology you want. Actually, it's the softer part of any organization which determines success. And that is, by the way, more difficult to execute on. That's why companies were able to do it completely become outliers, because hardware, people, getting in people, setting in processes, getting in the softwares and everything is all done. all standard. There's no differentiation. So the reason I bring this up is ultimately the culture of any organization, and specifically so in a startup, because in a startup, you're just growing and evolving, and the culture also happens over the first few years. So you need to be careful that you don't let it happen. There have to be a set of values which are not only on paper and on your nice website, but a value system which you live and die by. It starts at the top. Because if the founders themselves are not adhering to the value system which they themselves want to create, why would anybody follow that value system? Learned from a colleague of mine that in Germany, they have a saying that when a fish starts rotting, it rots head downwards. Okay. So the same is true in any organization. You can have whatever else, but if the management, senior management, founders are not walking the talk, are not living by example, are not adhering to these value system day in and day out, no matter what you do, things will fall apart.
And how did they do customer acquisition? They had like someone in the US. So was that like a tough battle to convince people to outsource to India, especially high-end work?
Yeah. So most of the companies in that model would have a onshore in the market kind of a sales force. Actually, that's how it works.
Okay. And it was during this stint that you were also a founder for Ashoka University. Tell me about that.
So basically, there were some of us who were more from the IIT engineering background who wanted to do something in this space. There was another group of people who were also wanting to do this, but more from a liberal arts perspective. And through a common friend, all of us came together in the year 2008. Actually, for the first 2 years, we were exploring seriously about setting up a engineering college. But then over time, we realized that liberal arts also, there is a lot to be done, especially in India. That's when we started trying to conceptualize, and then, of course, execution in terms of all the other things, putting together a team, raising philanthropic money, and things like those. So that all followed.
And what is the headcount that they take in each year? Like just in terms of impact, like how many students do they impact?
I don't know the numbers now, but I think on campus right now, there would be more than 2,500 students. The staff is probably about 500 now.
Okay. This led to Plaksha also eventually, like this experience kind of like why Plaksha when you already were part of one university? Why did you also go ahead with the second university, like being a founder there?
As I mentioned, some of us in the early time wanted to set up an engineering college, right? So that became Ashoka and Liberal Arts and Sciences, absolutely wonderful initiative. But in 2015, I had an opportunity to start thinking about Plaksha as well. And in a forum, then we were discussing along with some other people around the need for a modern day tech university in the country. So that sort of gave me an idea that why don't I think about getting involved in a second university initiative? And that's when again spoke to some of my friends from the earlier days who were interested in doing something like this. And then some 5, 7, 8 of us got together in 2015-16 timeframe and started working on Plaksha at that point in time.
I think around 2016 is when you left Evalueserve. So what was the trigger that made you want to leave Evalueserve?
Well, Evalueserve was very simple. I just wanted to do something else. I've been doing this 15, 16 years. I just wanted to, and actually also I wanted to take a break. And even working like this almost 22 years, 23 years. And along with that, I also wanted to give myself an opportunity to just be with myself. So I realized that what I really enjoyed doing the most was to build something and be part of institution building. And the other thing which I had always realized that one needs to stick to one's core, and the whole area of knowledge services and everything, I knew something about it. So in 2018, then I founded Benori Knowledge.
How was it different from Evalueserve, or was it largely like a similar kind of business segment that you were targeting? Or
I mean, the question is not how it was different or not different. The question is what I wanted to do. In my evaluation of so many business plans around that time, and then I was also having dinner with a prof of mine from HBS, and he was also talking about how a lot of companies, and especially in emerging markets, are stuck inside this iron triangle of cost, quality, and time towards information, intelligence, and insights.
can you go a little deeper on that?
Yeah, so lot of companies, and when I was going through these business plans, startup founders, I was meeting them. They actually did not know a lot about their customers, about their competition, about their markets, so on and so forth. So there was a knowledge breakdown in some sense. Either the cost of that knowledge was too high, or the quality of that knowledge was too low, or turnaround time that some of their partners would take to give knowledge was again too high. So they were stuck inside that triangle. Later on, I met other companies which were much larger, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 crores in turnover. They were facing the same issue. So I put everything together and I said, look, why don't I have a more of an India focused APO, which can help so many of these good companies in unshackling themselves from that iron triangle. And again, there were whole India notion behind it also, which was that so many of these companies are good, but because of lack of this intelligence and these insights, they are not able to unleash their own potential. And because of that, they have a lesser growth rates. And because of the lesser growth rate, there isn't enough job creation in the country. All of these great companies, good companies with all these insights and data and everything in a cost effective and a high quality manner. And they probably will be able to do better, grow more. And with that, they will more job creation in the country. I want to make my own little contribution towards that also over the 10, 15 years.
Let me just recap my understanding. So the iron triangle is basically that if you want high quality, like if you want the quality access to be high, then the cost and time access will also become high. So then if you want high quality information, then it will also cost you more and will also take more time. And that kind of was restricting companies from really using the data. We are in a data rich era today where there are a lot of sources from where the raw data is available, but companies are not really able to convert that raw data into knowledge and build on it for better decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a big problem. It will be a huge problem. And there are many more Benori knowledges around here.
What was your first project like? Tell me what problem did you solve, or how did you help a company to get access to knowledge which helped them to optimize?
So the first project that we actually worked on, a friend who is a VC, he actually called me and he said that he wants to keep a track of 500 startups.
Okay, like his portfolio companies or just potential investments.
And that was really the first project. And it was a very cost effective project for our client. And at the same time, every 2 weeks, we would all these data points, there were about 24 different data points that we would collect for these 500 startups. And over the first year, then we almost built a time series, right? And then client, then as soon as they would see some virality in any of those companies, they would pick up the phone and talk to them and say, look, let's talk if we can invest. So that.
How would you, like you said, every 2 weeks you would update the data? Where was this data coming from? Was it like the companies submitting? I don't think the companies would submit every 2 weeks.
It's all domain data. So get it from a website, you can scrape some of that.
Like for example, LinkedIn can tell you headcount. So every 2 weeks you can update headcount, or like you can see number of Twitter followers or Instagram followers, or maybe there is some way to see the search, how many people are searching for that name.
And what happened with that is we started covering that in terms of industry segments. So there was something around food, there was something around edtech, there was something around health tech, there was something around fintech and things like that. And now actually not for that particular client, but otherwise we do a lot of benchmarking in a given sector. So in sustainability or climate, if they are, let's say, and we also work for very large companies, corporates, we work for large consulting firms and so on. So essentially this ability to track a certain segment or certain kind of companies or markets, that has for an investment firm, it has got translated into saying that, look, here is my portfolio company. Here are 5 other peers in that particular segment. So on a quarterly basis, can you just keep on tracking all these peer companies and give me some benchmarking report? I think this is all on the basis of publicly available data.
Okay. And I'm guessing like this is the kind of business which does not need funding as such. It's because it's a services business and you would need funds just for that initial period until the client pays you.
Correct. You're absolutely right. And fortunately, we are doing okay. So there is a surplus. And this is not a capital intensive business model. So really, My plan is to more of a build of a, not a startup, but more of a business over the next 10, 15 years. So you're absolutely right. This doesn't require much capital.
Tell me your go to market. How did you acquire this first customer? The first customer, I'm assuming, would have been through personal connections and network, right?
Yeah, that was an inbound call from a friend, right? So serendipity.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So it's very similar to what any other professional services firm would have in terms of go-to market. Over the years, we had to, when we started, we would be like an amoeba kind of a thing. Wherever we would see some food, we will go and get it, right? But over the first 2 years, from whatever we ended up doing and delivering, we realized that some bucketing started happening of our solutions. So there's a lot of work which happens in strategy support. So go-to market sizing models, peer-to-peer benchmarking, expansion, things like those. A lot of string of work that was happening there. The second area where a lot of work was happening was in sales enablement. And this is in the B2B space, so enterprise sales area. So companies would want to figure out their clients, get profiles made of their clients, or a new prospect that they want to go after. They would want some short profiles of them. And the other area where we saw a lot of work is in the area of content, white paper generation, thought leadership generation, and things like that. And as I say, content marketing is the only form of marketing left in the AI. On the basis of it, AI adoption by certain industry sectors, or how are people thinking about COP26 and sustainability issues and climate change issues in the future. So we end up writing a lot of such white labeled white papers, right, to our client, and they would do whatever they want to do it. The third thing which we saw a lot of work happening in is in the classical market research area. And that industry also in India has been struggling to deliver quality over the years. There are a few companies which are good companies, but mostly the quality aspects of market research projects in India has not been very high. So we not only do B2B servers, but we also do B2C servers. But our strength lies in that area of primary research, being able to interview key stakeholders. We can also do multilingual work. A lot of companies in India are expanding in the Middle East or Southeast Asia, and they would like to understand the lay of the land in those markets as well. So what we saw was this clustering of all these solutions. So we actually came down from 25 different things that we were doing to these 5 or 6 that we do now. The other thing that we saw was a consulting firm on one side, investment firms on the other side, and especially the startup community had a lot of requirement for bandwidth, smart bandwidth. So a lot of consulting firms who are clients of ours, they had more work. And of course, then COVID happened, but post-COVID demand just erupted, right, in the professional service. So they would have work, but no people to deliver. So where they started outsourcing some of their research part of their projects to us. We now actually work for the top 10, 15 global consulting firms doing all kinds of interesting work for them, right?
Let me just go through each of these segments that you have spoken about. So the first segment you said is you do strategy support. So you would be competing with a McKinsey there? Like it would be similar to what a...
No way. We are a research and data solutions. We are a KPO company, right? Knowledge process outsourcing, which means that it will be nowhere close to a management consulting firm like McKinsey, way down in that value chain, right? We only do the consulting firm, and we will never give recommendations. What we would give is value-added insights, well communicated, well documented through a process of secondary research, primary research, and data modeling. I'll give you a couple of examples of the kind of work we would do, right? So there is a advisory client overseas. They basically focus on sustainability and climate change. Okay. And they essentially work in the investment domain where they advise funds, the portfolio companies of funds around these issues from an investment point of view. So they gave us a list of about 80 to 90 funds on their portfolio companies. And they said, if you can give us profiles of all of these in terms of what they are doing in the area of sustainability and climate change. Then we would have to do secondary research, but at the same time, we would have to do a lot of talking to people, understanding what their plans are, how are they thinking about this. Example. We also have a client, let's say, in the consumer goods industry, more linked with wellness and beauty and all of that. So there we provide a solution where there are a lot of different products, a lot of different markets that they would like to keep a track of. So what we call the tracking solution. In India, for the life insurance industry, we have a solution where, all the life insurance companies have to put out in the public domain a lot of information every quarter. Get all that information, clean it up, and then visualize that in some dashboards in terms of how every company is doing on various parameters.
Okay.
So in the edtech space, somebody, a private equity client of ours, wanted to figure out the tuition sector in India, right? And everything. So for that, we did about 500 surveys with students. We did about 600 interviews with the tuition center owners and put it all together, offering, right? So the client comes to us, be a consultant, could be an investor, could be a corporate, could be a startup, could be a VC. And process, we will put together the final solution for them.
And this is also the part of your business which you call as classical research.
The question is whether classical research exists in today's world, right? But yeah.
Call it, like these telephonic surveys is what classical research used to be.
Surveys has always been part of classical market research, but the business research, there is data insights, there is data analytics, visualization, and all of that. We are a research and data solutions company.
Okay, got it. And what do you do for sales enablement? Give me some examples there.
No, so there is let's say an IT client of ours, right? They would want to constantly be on top of their clients, right? In terms of what is happening, news flow, where could there be other opportunities for them to sell more of their services and solutions. This apply for new prospects, right? So they already have, let's say, 5 banks as clients of theirs, or other 15, 20 banks that they would like to penetrate. So for those banks, they would like to get profiles of those banks in terms of org structure, in terms of financial performance, in terms of various other aspects of their business. And on the basis of profiles, they might see something there which enables their sales teams to pick up the phone and organize some meetings with the end client.
So what is the role of digital in this? Is it in terms of the way your output is delivered to client, like instead of delivering them a PDF file, there is a login where they see real-time dashboards? Is that how you use digital? Or like, what are the different ways in which you're using digital technologies?
The question is, what all do you count under digital? So we deliver everything on the cloud, through internet, software platforms. So from a delivery perspective, obviously we use everything, all technology. The place where I think really in our industry, what one has to think about is how can you use technology to deliver more efficiency, to deliver better quality. A lot of automations that one would do, right? You would have a certain process of getting information from the net in secondary research terms. Can you make that process more efficient? But to the best of my knowledge, there are a few companies who have some tools and, for example, the whole area of NLP, right? So a lot of companies in professional services industry are trying to figure out use cases for NLP. So really, it's on the delivery, in the project delivery process itself. Can you use more technology to become more efficient and have a better quality output? But mostly, I would say it's a lot of talk. And at the end of the day, I think there are several use cases, but I don't think anybody has cracked anything big so far.
Okay. Do you have like an in-house tech team, like coders and all? And
no. See, in our business, if today also you need to hire coders and you are in the wrong business, right? Also available there. The key question is, how do you create use cases? That's the key. We have some data modelers, we have some data analysts people, but it's a small team. But we really would not require to have any coders.
Yeah, why I'm asking is because some of these service lines that you offer could actually become products. Like you talked about for sales enablement, something which helps a company track their customer base and peers. Like if they want to track banking segment, then they can track. And this could be productified and made available at scale through a subscription.
You're absolutely right. So in fact, our insurance product is actually a product, and we already provide it to some of our clients on a subscription basis. I think the evolution of products from services to products, the way it works is that we start with the services company. We start automating various parts of the service delivery and then assess and see if there are any products coming out. Exactly happened with us and the insurance product also.
But what is your vision for Benori? Do you want Benori to be a house of products or to be a service company, or say 5-10 years down the line?
The 10-year vision would be to continue to scale the company, to build a wonderful institution, absolutely best in class, not only in India, at a global level. Always focus on two things, which is values and excellence.
You said that you wanted to focus on the Indian market. So is that still the case? Are you largely getting most of your revenue from India, or do you also have global clients? Or
Mostly it is from India, but also at the same time, we do get some amount of work from outside. But that might also be for the Indian clients. So it's a combination, but the focus definitely is on the Indian market.
Wouldn't your opportunity be much higher outside India, both in terms of profitability and just because you're billing in dollars, and so both top line, bottom line?
I mean, I won't say it will be better or greater. Obviously, there's a big opportunity outside India also, but let's not undermine the India opportunity. India opportunity is also very nice, very attractive. And also go back to what I said in the beginning, right? This whole vision of adding, we are obviously delighted to have clients from outside India, but this whole notion of adding more value here in India to these companies so that they can have more job creation. I think that remains a very, very big mission for us. I've been very closely associated with some organizations which promote entrepreneurs, like TIE, for example.
Do you support as a member of TIE? Are you also an angel investor? Or what are the ways in which you are involved with entrepreneur community?
Yeah, so one is, of course, mentorship, being part of some of these events and so on. So ultimately, the idea is to be able to connect entrepreneurs to investors, to VCs. There are a lot of platforms and a lot of forums where I've been part of just doing that and things like those. But I think the most important value add is when it comes down to mentoring, one-to-one mentoring of founders, because mostly all of them are very, very energetic, enthusiastic, smart people. But oftentimes, because they're nothing against them, because they've not been experienced, they would tend to make basic mistakes in their execution.
So you spoke about being ready for near-death experiences. Has Benori had any such experiences so far, or at Evalueserve?
So I can talk about Benori. Yeah, I won't call it a near-death experience, but obviously in 2020, 21, when the first COVID was happening, we were in deep trouble to some extent, at least for the first 6 months of the COVID.
Like new business stopped coming in.
To talk to us. Everybody was struggling to figure out what to do. And we were still not profitable at that point in time. That was a big challenge. But fortunately, that time also forced us to take a step back and relook at our execution, the way we were doing. And what we realized and what we had to do to survive was to start selling online, because you could not meet people. Once you started doing that and once you became good at that, then you could just sell to anybody, anywhere.
Are you profitable now?
Yes, we are profitable.
And what kind of top line are you expecting this year to be at?
You can go and check it out.
And that brings us to the end of this conversation. I want to ask you for a favor now. Did you like listening to this show? I'd love to hear your feedback about it. Do you have your own startup ideas? I'd love to hear them. Do you have questions for any of the guests that you heard about in this show? I'd love to get your questions and pass them on to the guests. Write to me at ad@thepodium.in. That's ad@thepodium.in.